Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Monica Bachchan. I'm a founder of Metalogic Projects Management Services. It is a maximum women staff organization. Today, on 15th of December 2020, we are presenting you webinar on color-coated steel, sponsored by American Precoat, California, Tata Steel Color Nova, JSW Steel Coloron Plus, and NMDC Limited. This is our 22nd webinar during COVID-19 pandemic. We started in May and now here we are in December. Just a short housekeeping before we get started. If you have any question during the panel discussion, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll bring them up during the presentation and we will also have time for questions at the end. Always mention your company name and organization which you are representing and who would you like to address your question to. We are also, before we start, I would like to give a brief about the session to you all. Today, we all have come together to have a healthy discussion on color-coated steel. The webinar would focus on key aspects related to color-coated steel, which would include need for color-coated steel in various applications, user and consumer perspective of this subject steel, demand and supply, pricing of domestic color-coated steel, and a small reflection of the export market, differentiating parameters of color-coated and other coated steel, pros and cons, some myths and facts about color-coated. Further, our discussion would include the circumvention of quality control order by imported steel and the need for a robust monitoring and surveillance mechanism to manage these imports, especially from the FTA countries under the recent Carotar 2020. Government of India recently notified customs administrating of rules of origin under trade agreement rules 2020 Carotar in respect of rules of origin under trade agreements effective from September 2020. These rules set the guidelines for enforcement of rules of origin for allowing preferential rate on imports under free trade agreement. The free trade agreement with ASEAN countries mandates a minimum value addition of 35% of quality as per the rule of origin. Qualify as per the rule of origin. However, the same may or may not be getting fulfilled under this agreement, which is a point of discussion today. So from here, I would let our speakers take the dais to take the discussion ahead. Our expert panelists are Mr. Sridhar, Revinipati, ED and CEO, Coated Steel at ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel India, Dr. Shubh Gautam, Chief Technical Architect at American Precoat, California, Mr. Sanjay Sahani, Chief of Sales and Marketing, Branded Products and Retail, Tata Steel Limited, Mr. Mohan, Kirby Building Systems Limited, Mr. Ashwini K Sharma, Vice President Sales and Marketing, JSW Steel Coated Products. And I'm your moderator, Monica. To begin with, I would like to start with Mr. Sridhar to please open the session. And before that, a little introduction about him. Mr. R.V. Sridhar is the Executive Director and CEO at ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel. In his current capacity, he manages one of AMNS India's significant downstream business unit, Pune facility, Uttam Galva, conversion of color shine, Hazira Coated and Indonesia SBU, with production, sales, and operations covering 3 million tons across 5 plants. In his earlier assignments as ED and CEO of SR Steel pre-coated facility, he turned around the business from being a loss maker to one of SR Steel's most profitable SBUs through process innovation and working capital management. He achieved a consistent 97% plant utilization level, the highest customer satisfaction index, and an enviable employee engagement index of 84%. I would like to welcome Mr. Sridhar. I request you to please take the session.
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you, all my friends from industry and also our worthy suppliers, Dr. Gautam, because of whom, you talked about a turnaround, and this turnaround, this process innovation, whatever we talked about, is also thanks to the seamlessness with which he has supported us all through. Okay, be that as it may, now you asked the question, which is quite valid. Why color-coated steel? Color-coated steel is the most aspirational product in the entire steel gamma which we have in India. It is growing at the rate of 12% CAGR. Okay, of course, PPGI, pre-painted galvanized, is slightly lower, pre-painted galvanum is slightly higher. Having said that, right now the installed capacity is about 3.5 million tons or so, and we are running at about 2.3 million tons. What is the capacity utilization, etc. The capacity utilization of the whole industry is about 60%, and the capacity utilization of the standalone producers, those who are not integrated, is much lower, 36%. There are various reasons for it. Be that as it may, we expect by 2024 or 2025, the total production of color coated, or other demand of color coated, which is about 2.3 million tons now, may go up to 3.5 to 3.6 million tons. And ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel would also take a large portion of this increase. We are concentrating on our greenfield expansion as well as brownfield expansion. We are likely to set up about another 1.8 to 2 million tons of coated steel, out of which 1 million tons would be color coated steel as we go along. Now, what are the various uses of color-coated steel? One, of course, is the aspirational part of it, which I mentioned, with India growing in its GDP and the per capita income growing and all. It's an aspirational product. Then also it adds aesthetics to the whole thing. Apart from this, we also have the corrosion resistance properties of color-coated steel, which enhances the basic galvanized or galvanum corrosion resistance. Lastly, the functional part of it. Now, let me spend a few minutes on the functional aspects of color-coated. You must have seen this, COVID times which has come. There is a functional need to have clean rooms and what should I say, cool rooms, etc. in hospitals and all. So we are supplying to that end use in various parts of the country. So now this antibacterial, antiviral coatings. So I think many of our other friends from industry are also doing the same thing. So now this is one area which has caught on. Now with the pharmaceutical industry, which is also plays a big part with regard to this COVID-19 vaccines and all that, we have about 37 to 38 million tons capacity for food cold chain, but we do not have the capacity yet for pharma or medical cold chains and all. So we have done a pioneering work. Just about 2 days back, you might have seen a Twitter message from ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel, where we have pioneered into medical refrigeration as well with one of our main customers. So this sort of thing where we are talking about deep freezers, reefers, walk-in coolers, pharma, medical refrigeration, this is going to take up in a big way. The growth is going to be there. In fact, I would even say that whatever projections which we have by 2025, that let's say the color coating demand will go up from the current 2.3 million tons to 3.5 million tons. It may go even beyond that. It may go even beyond 4 or 4.5 million tons, the rate at which it is growing. In fact, among all the steel products, this is the most profitable as well. The government is trying to set up 25 to 30 cold rooms in each state. Now, this is a growth factor. Apart from this, there are other growth factors like the highways, thanks to our dynamic minister, Nitin Gadkari. 41 kilometers per day is the sort of expansion of the highways and all that. So all these highways would require petrol pumps, kiosks. So those sort of things. Apart from this, there's this solar capacity. Solar capacity would require galvanized, galvanum, and as well as color coated. Now, as you know, the non-renewable energy is the goal is by 2020 to 175 gigawatts, out of which 50 to 55 gigawatts will be solar itself. Then, thanks to our present government, 111 million toilet blocks have been constructed all over the country. Now, this has been a big demand booster for color coated. So these are some of the functional aspects where the color coated is used. I'm sure you must have read this book, India, A Wounded Civilization, by one of the greatest, Naipaul, where he says India is open to the open defecation all across. But thanks to this 111 million toilets which have been built in the last 1.5 years, now this stigma from our country is going away. Then again, we have railway stations which are getting beautified. Instead of asbestos roofs, you have now color-coated roofs. Then, of course, there are normal other functions like, you have this white goods and all. 420,000 tons per annum is the demand for coated products in white goods, mainly galvanized and color coated. 50% is in LG and Samsung itself. Not many players are there in PCM printed colored material, front doors of refrigerators and all. In fact, some of our friends are already there, but we are also getting into it in a big way. So this is one area where instead of imports, we will do a lot of value addition within the country itself. Then you have, apart from railway stations and toilet blocks and all, we have doors and windows. In fact, this is what we call as biomimicry. Now, wood finish, steel imitating nature. We have wood finish doors, windows, and artificial ceilings. Artificial ceilings so far used galvanized. But from recently, let's say about a year or so, we are also having color-coated artificial ceilings and all that. Storage racks, bus body building. Bus body normally does not use color-coated. It's all post-painted. But inside of the bus body, again, it's color-coated. So there are a lot of end users which we are finding, and a lot of creativity, innovation in the way things are going on. So yes, this is the reason why color-coated is having a big demand. And in the rural areas, GC corrugated sheets are being replaced by color-coated. So these are some of the things. Now, what are the things which takes to be successful in this sort of environment? I mean, we in AMNs are one of the fastest lead times with regard to color-coated. We believe in standardization. We have two models. One is the mass market model, and then we have the differentiation model. In the mass market model, we have standardized most of our colors and all that. We can serve in 5 to 7 days. So quick delivery will be a critical success factor as we go along. In fact, we have started with a campaign called, earlier it was called SR Omnipresence. Now we are talking about AMNS Omnipresence. Nook and corners of the country, let's say 55 to 60% market share of color-coded pre-painted galvanized is from ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel. So now this sort of versatility, we have 4,000 colors and quick delivery, easy availability, value for money, consistency. For the last 6 years, we're not a single, our suppliers, Dr. Gautam will watch for. We have not failed, in the consistency of our production, of our sales, and so on and so forth. In fact, there's a beautiful saying by Larry Page of Google. It's called the toothbrush test. That daily, what is the most common things which we do? The toothbrush. So I want a product which is easily available, which is common use by the public, which is what the Google search engine. So similarly, we would like to replicate it here. What is the toothbrush test for ArcelorMittal and Nippon Steel? It is our product being widely available all across the country. So these are some of the things which I have mentioned. Apart from this, there is a big opportunity for growth in the rural areas. Why is India not China? Because rural credit is available thanks to Alibaba, thanks to JD.com, Tencent, and etc. So can we replicate that sort of a model in the rural sectors in India? If we do so, then this is another big growth engine which will take forward. Lastly, what Monica was asking, what about imports from FTA countries and all that? There is a rumor that some of these products, which are coming mainly from Vietnam, not taking the mills names and all that, they are not compliant with the Indian standards, BIS standards, or whatever, which are flouting the government. So this is something which we should look at, and we should stop this imports immediately. Because I am also told some of the suppliers have even approached the government BIS standards, saying that we would like to do AZ40, whereas pre-painted galvanum in the country, the BIS norms is AZ70. So these are some of my thoughts, and of course I can go on and on, but Monica, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sridhar, for giving the opening remark and highlighting the usage of color-coated steel and the rise of color-coated you see in rural demand, in rural market. Moving on to our next panelist, we have the brain of this webinar, Dr. Shubh Gautam. Chief Technical Architect, American Precoat, California. Let me give a little introduction about Dr. Shubh Gautam. Having worked for Goldman Sachs and other Fortune 50 companies before his home calling, he finally founded and established the Srisol American Precoat Group in 1996, a B.Tech from IIT Kharagpur and alumna of IIM Ahmedabad. He has been at the front end of innovations and scientific developments for more than 2 decades. Winner of numerous international recognitions like Geneva Star Quality Award and recipient of Marquis Who's Who in Science and Engineering in 2008. Under his leadership, the Srisol Group today is the world's second largest group producing lining system for the food and beverage industry and a market leader in sealing lining solution and coil coating, along with other value-added products like aerospace coating and specialty chemicals. In a short span of 2 decades, American Precoat not only holds numerous intellectual property rights, but also takes up turnkey projects in the regulatory compliance domain. I welcome you, Dr. Shubh Gautam. Over to you. Please unmute your mic. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Monica. Would you let me share my screen with everybody?
I'm making you a presenter.
Sure. Very good afternoon, everybody, and a very good afternoon to Sridharji, Mr. Ppgi Mohan, Mr. Sanjay Sahani, Mr. Ashwini Sharma. I hope I didn't miss out anybody. Monica, thank you for organizing in Metalogic back team. Friends who are part of this seminar. The opening slide obviously talks about what I intend to say. We have specialists here in terms of ArcelorMittal Steel, Tata Steel, JSW Steel, who would talk about user experience, consumer behavior, market segmentation, portfolio management. I'm here to talk about what is color-coded steel and myths and facts about color-coded steel. This is what India was in 2008 on your left. If you landed on Mumbai airport, this is what you would see. And if you see on the right, this is what you see when you land here, right? So what are we doing? We are basically changing one roof at a time. Welcome to the world of color-coded steel. So when we get into the world of color-coded steel, what is it? The question is, why do we need color on steel? Because we have zinc. We have zinc and aluminum called galvalume. And now we've got zinc, aluminum, and magnesium. So why do we need color? And of course, we need color because we are in the business of protection. And what is the business of protection? Business of protection is pretty simple. A king protects a kingdom. A father protects a family. A CEO protects an organization. And make no mistakes, color protects steel. Color is not for the aesthetics of it. And I'll come back on this point a little later because we've got about 10 minutes to share. This is a history of galvanizing. Early 1900, there were cold roll mills and hot rolling mills. And then probably someone called Mr. Senzheimer, a Polish native, he introduced something where you dip a steel into a molten zinc. Between 20 and 30, World War I is just about finished. In the process, by 1938, Mr. Senzheimer had an operating galvanizing line. By 1915, American steel companies knew the process was solid. And between 1945 and 58, they built 60 Senzheimer galvanizing lines. The question is, why is galvanizing called Galva? Galva is not a Latin name. It's not any other French name for zinc. Why do we call it galvanizing? Because of a scientist called Luigi Galvani, who introduced to the planet the process of electrochemical engineering. And that was using different metals. And that was followed by another brilliant scientist called Alessandro Volta, who said electropotential between two metals, creating a corrosion cell. And in awe of their contribution to the world of electrochemistry, Sir Humphrey Davy drew the conclusion that zinc protects steel. I'm quoting Galva info on this. Zinc protects steel and hence galvanic protection in the honor of Luigi Galvani. That's why we call it galvanizing, just to let you know. And when you say galvanizing, what you see here is an alloy layer. If you take a galvanized steel, on the bottom and the top is a very complex mixture of what we call iron, aluminum, and zinc. It's a very complex mixture. It's called alloy layer, and this is responsible for protection, which is so it protects. Zinc, aluminum protects steel. How many types of hard-dip coatings are there? I'm talking about the basics. We have galvanized, which is 100% zinc. We have galvalume, 45-55 zinc and aluminum. We have galfam, 95%, 5%. We've got zinc, aluminum, magnesium, which has 2 to 4% magnesium. We have galvanil, 10% of iron. And with this, today there are more than 854 sophisticated galvanized coating lines on this planet. But that's about galvanized. Why do we need color? We need color because we have to make beautiful appliances, fridges, microwaves, washing machines, refrigerators, aluminum composite panel for architectural applications. We have to make a lot of accessories, the downspout, etc. And these happen in a color-coated steel. We make air conditioners. We make convectors out of color-coated steel. We make sandwich panel. Sandwich panel is a beautiful insulation property that helps typically in countries like India in hot climate. We make beautiful garage doors out of color-coated steel. We make awesome roofs out of color-coated steel, which are warranted for up to 40 years. This is a live photograph where American Precoat has contributed in this project. So the question is, this is a truck trailer body with a solar panel on top, which is a product out of pre-painted steel, color-coated steel, essentially. So what is color-coated steel? If you look at steel, and if steel was 6 feet wide, so you take 0.5 mm. 0.5 mm is the thickness of a typical color-coated steel used for roofing application, architectural application. You imagine that 0.5 mm to be 6 feet. What you see here is this tiny little layer on two sides is the metallic layer, and then that tiny layer after that is color. This is the breakup of the contribution of color to the entire steel. That's all the color does to a steel. If I would like to present a steel as a 6 feet long bar, this is how much color we put on. Why I'm telling you is the cost implications of color and the value proposition of color versus the performance that it offers us. So what do we say? Coil coatings or color-coated steel, why do we use them? A, aesthetics. B, protection. C, shelf life of pre-painted steel. And D, all of the above. Of course, the answer is all of the above. Now, when you say the answer is all of the above, the bigger question comes is, what is the enemy of color-coated steel? And this is where the entire fact and fiction comes in. Even today in India, people buy color-coated steel by measuring the amount of zinc and zinc aluminum. My question is, barrier protection that defines the protectability coming from zinc is because in a typical galvanized steel, zinc is exposed to the atmosphere. When you put color on top of it, what is exposed to the atmosphere, zinc or color? So when we buy color-coated steel, our first discussion should be on color or should it be on zinc? Our first discussion should be on quality of color or should be on grammage of zinc? Our first point of discussion should be on cost of color or should be on quantity of zinc. And this is where things could be better. This is a toothpaste. And what does a toothpaste have? Let me tell you what a coating is. If toothpaste was a final product, then the cellulose gum is the resin. It's the resin that makes the color. The hydrated silica, the mica, and the titanium dioxide are the pigment that give you that beautiful look. The solvent is water, and additives are sorbitol. This is how a coating is manufactured. It's got too many ingredients. We did a small project in Middle East because Middle East prides itself to be one of the most quality conscious segments in this part of surrounding Asia. And this we do probably every 3 years. And this was part of one of our mandates benchmarking quality at Jabalali, and I'm sharing these things with due permission from our partners and coworkers. This was done in Jabalali to prove a point. This is a building structure in free trade zone in Jabalali, UAE. What is the problem? Is problem corrosion or problem fading? Is problem corrosion or problem peeling? Is problem corrosion or problem is chalking? This is another building in Jabalali. If you see this huge green, they used to be dark green, they've become light green. Is this corrosion or is this fading, peeling, and chalking? Let's move forward. This is another building in Jabalali. They're all Jabalalis. And they were the best color-coated steel that money could buy. This is Canon. Canon sued the pre-engineered building manufacturer who erected this 3 million square feet site for them. Is corrosion the problem? So when we speak about color-coated steel, why do we only talk about corrosion? You show me a corroded steel, one color-coated corroded steel, and I will show you at least 100 faded, peeled, and chalked color-coated steel. What is the point that I'm trying to make? The point that I'm trying to make is coatings help. Coatings are phenomenal products that improve the property of the surface. And if the weathering happens on the surface, then let us look at coatings from a different angle. Color-coated steel is not about zinc, not about grammage of zinc and grammage of zinc in aluminum. Color-coated steel is about color. Let me give you some small little snippets of what coatings can do in life. And these are small videos I'm playing for you. This is a treated product with a very special American Precoat coil coat. And what we are adding on it is ink, because ink is muddy in nature, right? And see what happens. This is acid going on an untreated color-coated panel. This is acid going on in a good color-coated panel. Look at the difference within 10 minutes. A good color-coated panel versus another color-coated panel. Let me take you back and let me play this for you. This is a treated color-coated steel. Look how ink completely runs off the product. Let me play it for you again. The ink completely runs off the product. And I'm going to come and explain to you what corrosion is all about. Let's go to the next. Bolt and oil test. Bolt and oil test.
Dr. Shubh Gautam. Dr. Shubh Gautam, yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Sridhar has to leave right now, and he will try to join us during the Q&A. I just wanted to make an announcement that he's leaving right now. Thank you, Mr. Sure. Sridhar. I hope you will be able to join the Q&A. Thank you so much. Dr. Gautam, please continue. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So this is what happens. People say when we erect buildings, we have grease that is applied. We have scratches on the roofs. And because of the scratches, the color comes off. And because the color comes off, hence zinc is there. I can tell you we have scratch hardness that can go up to 3,000 kgs on a point load. You know what that means? It's 3,000 grams on a point load, which means for 3,000 grams on a point load, a human being will have to weigh more than 425 kgs. This is a bolt and nut test. Let me play it for you.
So is there any audio with the video? Because we are not able to hear the video.
No, there's no audio. It's only visuals.
Okay.
There's a point I'm trying to make. Can you believe this is all because of coatings? Look at this carefully, this particular thing. Coatings are valuable. Coatings give you all kinds of anti-corrosive treatments. And how corrosion happens is, I'll come back once we stop the share scheme. Look at this carefully. This is a paper napkin. This is a paper napkin. And if you add water to it, nothing happens. The same thing is applied on steel. And this is two paper napkins. One is seated on the left, other one is not seated on the right. What happens if we dip this into a bowl of water? We take it out. Can you believe it? The paper napkin on the left is still dry. If water will not stay on the steel will not corrode. That's how important paints and coatings are to steel. And these are live lab videos made just for people to understand that these are not simple color-coded steel. Color is the lifeline in color-coded steel. So we should talk about color when we talk about steel. Let me take you back to this. These on the left is a gentleman wearing a shirt and a pant which has not been treated. On the right, it has been treated, and look what happens. It's a live video. These are a couple of co-workers who volunteered. Can you believe this? If this would apply to your roofing sheets, would your roofing sheets ever corrode? Corrosion happens when water stands. If water would not stand, corrosion would not happen. So understanding India, and let me quote here, Randy Posh. The brick walls are there for a reason. The brick walls are not there to keep us out. The brick walls are there to give us a chance to show how badly we want something. We stand at the precipice of going from 2.3 million tons to 4 million tons of color-coded steel. And we don't know what color is. I'll end by saying, life is always new, mind is always old. Life is never old, mind is never new, hence they never meet. With this, I'll stop sharing and I'll go live. Monica, can you take me live again?
Yeah.
Yes. The last point that I want to make in color-coded steel, and this is where the fact and fiction comes in. Typical specification of a color-coded steel is 5 microns primer and 15 to 18 microns of top coat, right? Do you know, gentlemen, what is 5 microns? Wikipedia says, if I draw one hair, one human hair, the average diameter of one human hair is 100 microns. 100 microns. And what are we saying? We're applying 5 microns of primer and saying, wow, we have a primer on top of color-coded steel. We are better off not applying that primer, because that 5 micron primer with a deviation of 2 microns is actually 3 microns. Splice one human hair in 100 parts, what you get is the primer that you have on color-coded steel. Color is not for aesthetics. Color is more important than zinc. Color is more important than zinc and aluminum, because we are in the business of protection. When we talk about imported steel coming from Vietnam, we talk about they're not giving us the same zinc quality. Now, instead of saying that to make a quality product in color-coded steel, we need to have 120 GSM zinc, why don't we say that we need to have a galvanic potential which is in excess of minus 4.2 millivolt? Why do we say zinc? Why don't we talk about the protection that we are looking for? We're not looking for zinc when we buy color-coded steel. We want zinc when we buy galvanized steel. When we buy color-coded steel, we're buying color. Let me give you a practical example in India, and I verified this an hour ago. A 5012 is available for 140 rupees a kg, the blue color. A 5012 is also available for 200 rupees a kg. Now, when we buy color-coded steel, should we not ask what was the price of the color that was put on the steel? Oh, we need 120 GSM, but we need the worst blue on top of it. And then we want to say, this is the best steel because it's got 120 GSM. How wise are we? when the color-coated product fades, when it chalks, when it peels, the zinc is sleeping. Zinc aluminum is sleeping. And we pay for zinc and aluminum, and we don't pay for color, and we call it quality. Standards kill innovations. Make no mistakes. If there were standards in Silicon Valley, there would never have been a company called Apple. Protection comes from color. Color is important. I'll give you 3 reasons why I'm talking this. You take any coil coating. You take it and do a filler test on it. Filler means how much of that paint has fillers. There is no such test in India. No customer wants to do the test. Filler is a way to reduce cost. We want to make the best quality color-coated steel with the worst quality of paint. And we talk about BIS standards. How wise are we? Color-coated steel, let's talk about color first. Now, the second myth is, when we apply fasteners on our roofing sheet, there is a slight rubber flange. It is supposed to fit on the sheet. And when you apply pressure, there's a dent. Now, the problem is the quality of fasteners are bad, and it's a recycled rubber ring. So the rubber vanishes in 6 months, so you have a gap between the color-coated steel and the fastener. And there is a dent, so there's water accumulation. And because water will accumulate, and there is a cut edge, so I need a large amount of zinc to protect me. It's a myth. It's a complete myth. Apply good quality fasteners. Why should they give away? And number 2, have the kind of coatings we showed you in the video. Let me tell you, if water stands, water will find its way through. There's no way to prevent water. That is how strong adversary water is. That's why we call it waterproofing. We never give guarantee. You have any best infrastructure cast cement slab. You stand water on it, water will pass through. It's a question of time. How much time will it take? The second myth is, when we
you need to conclude,
cut
sir.
a galvanized steel, zinc rolls. Zinc rolls only up to a thickness of 0.35 millimeters. And this is not my information. This comes from Galvinfo. And Galvinfo is a body which promotes zinc. Their lobbying budget in Washington, D.C. is in excess of hundreds of millions of dollars. Zinc cannot flow on a 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 millimeter steel. Zinc is not rubber. This is a myth. Laptops 10 years back used to be 5 kgs. Today they are 600 grams. Laptop 10 years back used to have 80 MB of hard disk. Today they have 1 terabyte. Lightweighting is the norm of the day. If you lightweight, you save so much for the country. This is where innovation should be.
Dr. Gautam, sorry to interrupt.
People say, yeah, 1 more minute. This is the reason. Yeah, 1 more minute. When people say scratches happen, so zinc is required, you have scratchless coatings today. The question is, we don't want to pay for it, but do the math. If you take away a little zinc and you take a better coated top coat, where do you save? I'll sum up, since Monica is after my life. Primer 3 microns is as good as 0, let me tell you. As good as 0. If you want to apply primer, have 10 microns. 1 human hair is 100 microns. It's a sham. Number 2, top coat should be the best quality, not the cheapest quality. Paint should be the best quality. It's like saying, if you had 5 qualities of zinc, today zinc is 250 rupees a kg. If you have 5 qualities, the cheapest being 125 rupees a kg, will we buy 250 rupees kg or 125 rupees kg zinc? Scratch resistance, fasteners, it's a myth. Color-coated steel is the future. It's one of the greatest innovative subjects we have. This country is growing. We have the best chemists here. We have the best coatings, best steel mills, best lines, best engineers, best consumers. It's a great chain. Let's not mess it up. Let's not buy color-coated steel by asking how much grammage is zinc. Let's buy color-coated steel by asking what is the quality of top coat? What is the quality of paint?
Right,
That's
sir.
my case. Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you for organizing this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Shubh Gautam. And very clearly, you have explained the myths and facts about color-coated steel. Moving on to our next panelist, we have Mr. Sanjay Sahani. Mr. Sahani has a rich experience of 25 years, having worked in Tata Motors, Tata International, and Tata Steel. He completed mechanical engineering from Pune University in 1994. Further, he completed a diploma in material management from Institute of Management Development and Research in 1996. Currently, he is serving as the Chief of Marketing, Sales, Branded Products and Retail at Tata Steel and is responsible for revenue crossing over 20,000 crores. Over to you, Mr. Sanjay Sahani. I'm unmuting your mic. You please unmute your mic. And I believe you
Yes,
also have a
Monica.
presentation.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sir, very well, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very good afternoon to all the esteemed panelists and my dear friends, Monica and your complete team, a lot of our customers who are connected across our channel partners and colleagues from the steel industry. So Monica, my compliments to you and your team for coming up with all these newer area topics and topics which are of relevance. Color coated is very important, because the rate at which the color coated demand is growing in India, and there is a need for us to discuss on this topic. There is a need for us to also educate the users, consumers, as well as the producers on this area. In fact, before I move ahead, we are in the COVID times, and I pray and hope that each one of you, your family members, friends are all safe. And I think Dr. Shubh Gautam, he's just come back from the US. He's brought some good news for all of us. The vaccine starts rolling out. So I'm sure it brings more positivity to the communities. It brings more hope, and also uplifts the sentiments of across the globe for the various industries. And I'm sure that all of us together will sail through this pandemic and all come out with flying colors, as I can say, which is linked to today's webinar. The trends in coated is being in sales since 2008. I've really seen phenomenal change of what has happened on color coated, and in fact this goes back to many years back when we had introduced color coated Durashine for the roofing, and we would see 100% growth year on year. And my esteemed panelists spoke about how the adoption is happening in rural, and how customers and consumers want to add more and more color to them. Of course, the product also is far superior, and the same trend continues, and which I will speak on some of the several segments. But very important is also the point Dr. Shubh Gautam said on quality. Our observation, of course, several villages went from GC, which was the galvanized corrugated roofing sheets, to color coated, and now have gone back to GC because of poor product quality. The color coated sheets which they used, some of them were imported, some by the secondary players. A lot of them faded in a few years. And so I do believe, and I support Dr. Shubh Gautam's point, the quality and the quality of color of the paint is uttermost important. The Indian color-coated market is over 6 million, which is there. This is the total coated market of about over 6 million. Of course, I will now divide, if I were to divide it into basically on the various segments which are there. There is your building and construction, which is over about 2.65 million today. The non-building and construction, which is about 2.9 odd million. This has 3-4 parts to it. There is something which gets consumed in the ECS space. This is under 2 million tons today. And there is a retail market also, which is little under than about 1 million. This I'm saying is non-roofing. And a large part of today, if you go down to rural India, a lot of these trunks today are made from color-coated material. And even people in the rural space would like to use these kind of products. And then, of course, you have the OEM, which also consumes about 0.3 million ton of coated material. In the overall 6 million basket also is automotive, which is 0.5 of basically coated products. There is primarily galvanized and of course Ppgi. also electro-galvanized, which gets this thing. So there is a trend of shift from non-coated to coated. Just to give you an example, Maruti Suzuki many years back had just about 10% of coated steel being used in their cars, which went up to 30% a few years back. And going ahead in this January, 2 of their models have 100% of outer panels only being coated. So the point of protection against corrosion is utmost importance. Today's consumers want that. They are willing to pay. India also has a very large coastline, and as a result of which results in a lot of corrosion. So this I just wanted to give some perspectives of why coated is important. And let me now come to basically on the color coated market, and especially I will focus on India and over 2 million tons of market and growing at a phenomenal rate. Yes, the infrastructure development, where the revival of the construction has started, and we are seeing a substantial increase in demand here. An area which is also growing very well is the white goods and home appliances, refrigerators. So the COVID pandemic has resulted in change in consumer trends, which are very important for each one of us to know. Each family today stocks much more food than they were stocking in the prior days. So hence require larger refrigerators. They are even buying 2 refrigerators at home. The diesel market is showing a substantial increase in the demand. This is primarily due to hygiene, which has been thrown by the pandemic. Washing machines, dryers demand has definitely gone up, as families would like to improve hygiene at home, and this is resulting in a large jump in the color-coated demand in these segments, growth which we have not seen in the past. So white goods is today consuming a little under than 100 KTPA per annum and growing substantially. Commercial refrigeration is another area which continues to grow across, consuming today about 30,000 tons an annum. The refrigeration which the vaccines will require will also throw further demand in this coming area, which I can see. Sandwich panel, clean room panels, the demand continues to jump. The pandemic has again thrown trends which are very positive for demand in these areas. Anti-dumping duty, of course, by the government is also resulting in that import of color-coated products has definitely stopped. Yes, there is a need to further strengthen the BIS norms or to stop the low quality products which come in. One of my panelists also spoke on doors and windows. Tata Steel themselves have a brand, Pravesh, by which we supply doors and windows across the country for our consumers. On the retail, roofing is a large part. Durashine, premium brand, we supply across the country to all the states, and in the retail space we have presence of over. We have a network in which we are present in 95% of all the districts, and continue to see a jump in the demand which is there. Tata Steel had recently taken over Bhushan, and now called as Tata Steel Bhushan. And Bhushan has excellent color-coated facilities both at Angul, Saibabad as well as Khopoli. And from these facilities, we have come out with color-coated brands. We had recently launched Color Nova, our brand in the color-coated space, and it has been received very well. This brand is there for the SMEs, where we cater to currently about 26 SMEs across the country. Not only the SMEs stock the material, they also have processing lines, and they supply just in time to all the SME or ECA customers which we have in small or large requirements which are there. A very wide range of products have been made available on Color Nova by us. And if you see, Color Nova is one of the sponsors for today's webinars. We have the grades available, of course, CQ, DQ, EDD, HSQ, coating thickness between 82 to 75 GSM, a thickness of material between 0.25 to 1.2, width between 900 to 1250, and tolerances which today's customers need and demand. So going ahead, we see a substantial jump coming across from each of these segments, not only in roofing, but as consumers and customers continue to spend more and more. The COVID trends give us additional opportunities. The anti-dumping actions by government also resulting in a lower amount of imports. Consumers getting more and more educated on good products, the right products, to buy good brands is also resulting in a change. So that is why if you see the top brands of color-coated products, their growth is much higher than what is happening for the other secondary brands or some of the cheap imports which come in. A very important action by government was through the Character 2020, which is basically the customs administration of rules of origin under trade agreement and this thing. And of course, this gets implemented, got implemented from 21 September, and basically aims to supplement the existing operational certification procedure, which has been prescribed under different trade agreements. And this mandates certain origin-related details which have to be entered in the bill of entry. I'm sure this is a very good step which has been taken and will further help and support to ensure that the right color-coded products really come into India, and the consumers experience the good quality product and which they require and demand. So, Monica, this is all I had, and I'll be happy to answer any of the questions which come up of any of the segments or anything on the market which is there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanjay. And now, in fact, we have started to receive questions, which we will be taking shortly. Before that, we will be moving on to our next panelist. We have Mr. P.V. Mohan, Director at Kirby Building Systems Limited. Introduction about Mr. P.V. Mohan. He has an experience of more than 27 years in the commercial field of supply chain, operation excellence, purchase and sales and marketing. He also has hands-on experience of setting up new facilities and is a very techno-commercial person. He joined Kirby Building Systems India in 2005 in supply chain division and has also served as project director, SAP and director purchase. Mr. Mohan is currently working as director commercial with Kirby India and superheading the sales and marketing, construction management group and purchase division, dealing with both customers and vendors. I welcome you, Mr. P.V. Mohan, and I request you to, I believe you also have a presentation. So I have unmuted your mic.
Yeah. Good afternoon to the panel, Mr. Shubh Gautam, Mr. Sanjay, Mr. Ashwini Sharma, and of course Sridhar, and to all the attendees who are attending. In fact, Monica has cleverly selected one user of steel and all other manufacturers, in this panel. And of course, Mr. Shubh Gautam, who is a specialist on color, and in fact, his speech was really good. In fact, it was a lot of new things we could learn from you, Mr. Shubh Gautam. And
so shall I make you a presenter?
Yeah, please. Made a small presentation based on Monica's requirement. It may look a little basic. Can you see this?
Yes, sir. It's visible to us.
Yeah. So, just this is, I would like to, 1 minute, I'm not able to see. Yeah, just to give what's a color coating as such, we talk about a lot of color coating, but color coating is a term used to describe the application of the substrate what we normally use. I'm not able to do this somehow. It's color coated steel is also called pre-painted steel. Basically, it is only anything color is added to a steel. That is what we call color coated steel. And normally the color coating is in the range of 15 to 40 microns. And the finishes are in different forms based on the customer requirement. It can be smooth, matte, high gloss, texture, or printed. Now, of course, with printed coming in, a lot of new applications have come up in appliances. We see a lot of refrigerators and all with different colors, with beautiful textures coming up. And normally we get the color coated steel from 0.2 to 1.6 mm, and the width what we normally get is from 600 mm to 1600 mm. Maybe that is a maybe restrictions for the steel mills. And the various substracts used are basically to give the quality and compatibility to environment, and to also give a cost-effective solutions. You have different substracts based on the life of the steel, like you go for PVDF, you go for RMP, SMP. It depends on what type of requirements you need. And of course, you need a galvanized steel. There are different types of steel which we use presently in our business. We use a lot of galvalume and galvanized steel. Galvalume is of course, as already we all know, that it is a 55% of aluminum and around 43.5% of zinc and 1.5% of silicon by weight. Galvan also is 95 to 5. What we presently use in our buildings are galvanized steel and galvalume, which is widely used for building applications. This is a typical coating thicknesses. What we have, this is the base metal. Then you have a zinc coating on top. On top of that, you have a pre-treatment chromate coating. Then you have a primer coating. Then a top finish paint, and then a guard film, which is an optional. So you have this same paint on both sides to protect the main material, which is the steel, or it can be base metals, can be steel, it can be aluminum, it can be different materials based on our selections. And if you really see, the color coating is used both for in all buildings, whether it is domestic or commercial purposes. And basically, why we use this? Why we use this in the buildings is because it is very strong, and it is a good barrier to withstand all the climatic conditions. And because of the color coating steel, which is improving, and because of the external deterioration which is coming down, so this has really improved. So that is the reason why color coating is getting into a big way in steel industry, in construction industry. Then if you really see the 1 minute, I guess there is some problem. The roofing sheets, if you really see, for only we are using the galvanized steel basically only for purlin applications. Whereas,
so are you able to change the slides? Because the slides were not moving. So I'm just asking, were you able to change the slides?
Yeah, I can. Is it not moving now?
It is moving. It is moving. Please continue.
It is moving? Yeah.
Right, sir.
Yeah. In normally, right now, we are using a lot of color-coated steels in industrial as well as in urban area constructions. Right now, we are doing a lot of buildings for factory buildings as well as for some type of commercial high-rise buildings. So we are using a lot of color-coated steels, and it is gaining popularity, mainly because of the aesthetic look and the thermal insulation properties which is giving. And they're also, of course, enhancing the aesthetics parts. And of course, now I understand there are new coatings which have come up. That is basically for solar reflectivity index, which is much better, and as well as heat resistant type of coatings have come up. So definitely it is adding value to our building applications. And the color coated roofing sheets are used in place of galvanized iron sheets in buildings to provide better aesthetic looks. Earlier it was all galvanized. Now you have different colors to match the different tastes of people or our customers. And you can, as I told you, the color coated sheets substract can be different things like copper, aluminum, zinc, aluminum, or tin. And color coated steel are having different applications, and basic why actually we are using is color coated steels are highly corrosion resistant. It has got highly flexible, and it is very durable and malleable to really give any form whatever we need. And they have got a good resistance to peeling and flaking. And it has got excellent formability and design flexibility, easy to install. And of course, it is maintenance free, and steel being highly recyclable, definitely it is gaining a lot of importance in construction than the wet construction of cement and brick. And thermal efficiency has also improved with the new type of paints and new type of coatings which have come in. So that also adds a value. Applications of color coated, you name it, it is in industry, it is in cold storages and warehouses. Of course, in sandwich panels, you can have different colors of steel on both sides of the insulation. So it improves the aesthetic parts in different type of cold chains or cold rooms. In a lot of applications, and fall ceiling has come in. Even in our buildings, we use it for covering or putting it as a fall ceiling, or trying to cover our purlins on the bottom. In airports, in gutters. In fact, earlier in our buildings, we used to use PVC pipes. Now we use the same steel gutters, that is to give the aesthetic appeal of the building. And in white goods, as I told you about refrigerators and deep freezers and all, basically because of new type of pre-painted steels when it is coming up. In fact, with this pre-painted steel coming in, a lot of capex comes down for this deep freezers or commercial cooler businesses, because earlier they used to take steel, they used to do powder coating in their factories, and then do the manufacture their product. Presently, most of them are now going out of this powder coating business and getting a pre-painted steel, which is directly used for manufacturing their own products. And it is also used for roofing tiles. We have seen classic examples. In fact, the steel which comes, it looks as if it is it looks like that Kavela old type of things. In fact, it gives a similar look and feel. A lot of industrial furnitures are using now steel color coated steels, and a lot of office furnitures also are getting used. Now coming back to the domestic and export demand. In India, the demand for color coated steel is almost around 2.5 million tons per annum, and the installed capacity is around 3.5 million tons per annum. Right now, the utilization is 85%, but I understand it is more than 100% in the last few months because of the demand which is there for all the mills. The demand for color coated steel is multifold, as it is, as I told you previously, it is used for appliances, for pre-engineered buildings, warehouses, roofing, commercial buildings, and so on. And the demand is growing at a mid double digit, and as the new applications are coming in. In India, we have got Arcelor, you have got JSW, you have got BlueScope, who are manufacturing, and Tata. Right now with Bachchan coming in, definitely it adds one more factory which they can manufacture the color coated lines. As we have plants in Middle East, we have plants in India and even in Vietnam. So I'm just giving you a brief outlook on the global demand. So if you really see in terms of a region, the global coated steel can be divided into North America, Europe and Asia Pacific, Latin America and Middle East, that is MENA regions. And the consumption is definitely much higher in Asia Pacific as compared to any other region. In terms of demand, Asia Pacific holds a prominent share of market. It is followed by North America and Europe. China is definitely the largest market for coated steel apart from normal steel. In fact, if you really see in the last, in 2019, it has really accounted for the majority of the products which compared to the global requirements. The usage of coated steel is in residential and commercial building applications, and we understand it is growing phenomenally right now. China demand is much higher as on today. Even post-COVID, China has grown much more significantly than the rest of the world. In North America, also held vital share of global coated steel market in 2019, and growth of end-use industries are increasing in number of domestic players in vertical market segments are key factors which are boosting the market in this region. The market in Latin America and Middle East Africa is estimated to expand at a moderate pace during the forecast period. And domestic color sheet consumption in India is growing at a rate of 15 to 16% over the last few years, and in fact, mainly because of growth of white goods and the construction industries. If you really see the government has imposed anti-dumping duty on color-coated steel, which was easily available from China and other European unions. And with this new anti-dumping duty coming in, presently the duty imposed is almost like $14.3 to $173, depending upon the country of origin. If you really see, this is how it is from different countries and different producers. Anti-dumping duty has been put up. Coming to the challenges for buyers like us is that the prices are presently very, very volatile, and we are not able to take any decision on price what to be quoted to the customer, because our product is something, we are in the capex business, so we supply buildings, and these buildings take something around 6 to 8 months to complete and give to our customers, and we quote the price today. And the prices are so volatile, we are not able to understand today what would be the price the next month. And not only us, even the manufacturers are not able to tell us. So that is a big challenge to us, because normally a capex products, the customers don't change the price once it is accepted. So it's a big challenge as on today. And definitely because mills are fully booked in the last few months and catering to different global requirements. So they are more concerned about their productivity. So they don't accept high strength material in narrow width. So we need to really look at how to counter this. And new development of new colors with mills is a big challenge, because it takes some time. Maybe I understand there are problems with color manufacturers or color suppliers who will be supplying the color coating things to the mills. So that is a big challenge. How much is the lead time? Because now the customers want to reduce the lead time of buildings. Now customers want buildings within a few weeks. In fact, they take an example of China or any other such type of examples where buildings are made within few days. So now, but I don't think we get colors in few days. So we need to look at that. And yeah, there is a issue of minimum water quantities. And of course, these are all because of the present situation. And I hope that it will be very short term, and we'll be coming out of these issues very shortly. But during this type of challenging times, we need to understand how mills would cope up and meet the customer requirements. So this is just a small brief within the allotted time which is given to me. I think that's it, and I'll be happy to take questions from the audience, and so that it will be much more interactive at that time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. PV Mohan. And trust me, I'm really glad that you are here with us. And I'm sure our fellow panelists are also obliged that you have shared your challenges, which is extremely important to know from the customer point of view. And with this, we will move on to our the last panelist of the day, Mr. Ashwini K Sharma. A little introduction about Mr. Ashwini Sharma. Mr. Ashwini Sharma is a proactive leader and strategic thinker. In his professional career of 29 years, he has played a key roles in sales and marketing, operations and M&A, spanning across the metal industry. Currently, he is working as VP Sales and Marketing in JSW Steel and handling P&L responsibility of domestic and export of coated products. Mr. Sharma is a mechanical engineer and MBA with education from top Indian international schools. Over to you, Mr. Ashwini Kumar. Ashwini Sharma.
Good evening,
Yeah.
Monica, and it was a pleasure listening to all the panelists, especially to Dr. Gautam, who almost a very passionate, kind of plea on behalf of all of us that, we should be really kind of focusing more on the quality and less on the, the attributes of price or on the coating of substrates. Well, I think most of the agenda for this discussion has been covered by the esteemed panelists. So I will just want to talk about very few numbers which probably got missed out in the list of discussions. So if you look from global point of view, global perspective, the global color coating capacity is close to 75 million tons. And out of the 75 million tons, almost close to 50 million tons resides in China. And all the Chinese mills are operating at less than 35-40% capacities. So globally, this product is not doing that great, even though we are doing very well in India as such. So, anything which is an excess capacity in China is always bad news, especially for a country like us, because all kind of products do come out of China. So to make sure that we as a country and also companies in India are able to do a good job of it, we need to really listen to and maybe follow what Dr. Gautam earlier said, to bring the quality at the forefront and everything else has to follow. Look at the benefits and not really look at the standard. I totally agree to what Mr. Gautam said. So I will want to just spend a time here only on one critical end use, which basically is white goods. We have covered roofing. I think Kirby has done, Mr. Mohan has done a very good job of informing us what the challenges faced with Kirby and all the roofing industry. So when it comes to white goods, especially in India, we are primarily at a stage where things are going to really open up and explode in a big manner. And there are reasons for it. I will want to take this entire small talk in three parts. First, briefly highlight why so, what are the consumer dynamics. Second is what is the market size and the penetration levels. Third is what are the key challenges when it comes to handling this so-called white goods or appliance market is concerned. As Sanjay mentioned earlier that the country is changing big time. There are food habits being changed. People are buying more and more frozen food, which was earlier not a trend in India, but now Indian companies also following these trends. So one big thing is happening is we have a very large middle class, and most of the families are now becoming nuclear. So earlier, if we had a 6-member household having one refrigerator, now we are having a household with 3 members or maybe 2 members and still having one refrigerator. So number of appliances is going to actually double going forward. Most of the families now are double income and women are working. So women really don't have time to really cook 3 meals a day. So they want to cook it once and maybe store it and consume over the period of time. This is also going to ensure that the demands are going to be more and more for the white goods. Third trend which we always see is the the exposure to global markets and global trends. Most of the people these days are watching. They're traveling abroad. They're watching foreign serials, and you can see, mostly the trends which are there in terms of fashion, in terms of household, in terms of way of living are changing. So these are also going to make a big impact on the domestic white good markets are concerned. And last but not least, the COVID times. During COVID period, the entire country lockdown, most of the women were suffering because the households were not available. So men and women, everybody has to go to your kitchens, cook food, wash utensils, and so on and so forth. So quickly, as we see, because we are the largest supplier of color-coded appliance maker, we could say huge demand for washing machines and for dishwashers in the midst of the COVID period. So dishwasher was a category which was absolutely not at all in the country, but now probably it's fairly big. Even today, if you ask me, there's a wait list to buy dishwashers. You cannot buy any dishwasher online. So COVID also has really triggered the demand for white goods in the country. And with these trends in mind, if you see today, countries like in country we have got companies like Samsung, Haier, LG, Whirlpool, Arçelik, with a joint venture with Voltas called Voltbek, Bosch, Carrier, Media, and so on and so on. So everybody which is a global leader or a regional leader is already in the country. So with all these companies are currently either operating at close to 70% of the capacity and now have got a very large expansion plan going forward. So we are seeing surely, going forward, maybe in 3 to 5 years time from now, the market might actually double from current levels. So in terms of penetration levels, if you see refrigerators in India, even today the levels of penetration are at 28%. But if you look at the urban and the rural levels, in rural areas, the penetration levels are close to 14-15%. In washing machines, the levels are as much as 13%. Again, if you look at the rural areas, it's not even 3 to 4%. Air conditioners, the levels are as much as 5% for the full country. A country where the temperatures go in very extreme conditions, the 5% level is very, very low. So whatever the research numbers have come, the research numbers are talking that by 2026, all these appliances should have at least more than 2.5 times of the current penetration levels. So as Sanjay mentioned earlier, the country's demand of color and GP for appliances is close to 500,000 tons. So we're looking at definitely 1 million tons of color coded and GP going to appliances market. So now is where the real challenge comes in. The color coded for appliances, as we, Mr. Shubh, Gautam and other suppliers know, is very different ballgame. We're not talking about only aesthetic colors, we're also talking about extremely good control on RHS compliance, crack resistance, fade resistance, and so many things. And if that were not enough, the product itself is very difficult for the mills. We're talking about thinner products and narrower products. Okay, and when these consumers, on the other hand, are very, very discerning, even one sheet going wrong in a packet is a very good or proper, valid reason for rejection of the entire packet is concerned. So most of the current appliance makers don't have the right equipment to make appliance grade steel. Not only the substrate, but also in terms of the coatings are concerned. So going forward, we are expecting that probably the industry is going to become more discerning because there's more and more global players coming in. So the demand for quality and the quantity will be much more stronger. And we, keeping that queue in mind and already invested, we are going to be ready with one more color line maybe by the end of this month. And last but not least, when we talk about color-coded products for appliances, we are talking two different kind of products. One is, what we call as skins. They're basically embossed, color-coded which form the sides of a refrigerator or a washing machine. And then second part, what we call as doors, which are a top end of the color-coded product, where the quality of the door aesthetics is of super importance. So India, even today, as we speak, has been importing 100% of door material from various countries. So this is a big challenge going forward for us. Though few domestic companies have the capacities installed, but the capability has not been proven. So we as a company have already invested. So maybe by first week of next month, we will be ready to supply the first batch of VCM doors to one of the suppliers in the country. So this is an area where I think we can work together and ensure that the white good market is kind of taken care of the way it should be. The last but not the least is the processes. The industry, white good industry, demands that you not only supply the good product, but also you get your processes audited. So most of the current suppliers do not have robust processes. So that will also have to be addressed in the long run. I think that's it for my side, Monica. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashwani sir, for explaining the demand side of consumer durables and how the cultural change is actually creating a demand for steel. Now we will start the Q&A, and Dr. Shubh Gautam, I'd just like to inform you that we have received many questions, and we will try to take up as many as questions we can. So we are taking the first question we have from Mr. Prashant Gabane. He's from SAIL, and his question is to Dr. Shubh Gautam. If we have real scratch-proof paints coating require a 400 kg man to scratch it, do we have it at least in premium automobile or cars? Refrigerators and washing machine could use such coating and come up with premium variety.
Yes. Prashant, good question. Problem is, four wheels, we have Maruti 800, we have Mercedes. Now, you don't pay one hell of a lot to Mercedes just because it's got four wheels. You pay because it's more secure, it has more comfort, it's got more features. Today, we have scratch-proof coatings, very high scratch-proof coatings, which are used by oil and gas industry. Now, make no mistakes, oil and gas industries are not in the middle of a downtown. I cannot see as a manufacturer of garments, biscuits, shoes, coffees, steel, I can choose where I put my plant. But if I were in oil and gas industry, I have to go to a place where oil and gas is, and these are very remote locations. And primarily, oil and gas industry does not use color-coated steel for protection. Now, what I said is color-coated. So if they don't have color, they have coatings nevertheless. And one of the aspects of these coatings is a very high scratch-proof coatings. The question is cost, and I've been saying it. What really bothers me in India, and I'm being very blunt about it because I'm a well-wisher of the Indian industry, people want to put 120 gram of zinc, 120 gram of zinc on a 0.5 millimeter steel, which will convert to 0.5 millimeter total coated thickness steel, is costing you roughly about 6,000 rupees per ton. But they will put the worst quality paint. And if there was a scheme saying, buy one barrel of paint between 5 and 6 p.m. and one barrel free, probably to give for that. That mentality needs to change. And that needs to change now. And let's not beat about the bush. This quality control order is not to improve the quality of domestic product. This is only to prevent non-tariff barriers from bringing in imports. So, answering your question, yes, high scratch-proof coatings are available. 4,000 grams, which means 4 kgs pinpoint scratch hardness is available. I've shown you those videos. Those are live videos. They're not mocked. They're not made. There are co-workers. I've shown you in corrosion, if water will not stand, you will have excellent anti-corrosive properties. In a country like India, where dust settles and then dust mixes with moisture, especially in areas like Kerala, there is a big problem. We have to look at coatings from a perspective of performance and not as a perspective of cost. Will you be surprised, Prashant, today in India, a primer for color-coated steel sells for 100 rupees a liter? 100 rupees a liter. I don't understand. You know the cost of a primer in North America? The cost of the primer, if I divide by 3.54, because we sell it there in gallons, is close to 250 rupees. The crude is same, the base cost is same. So we have coatings. We just have to move from a lens of not using bad coatings, but to move to a lens of using good coatings. The contribution of coatings in a ton of color-coated steel is way, way less than zinc, and the contribution is way, way higher. I can demonstrate contribution of color in color-coated steel is 8x. I hope that answers your question.
Right,
Now,
sir.
I have a question, Monica, to Ms. Shubh Gautam on the same segment. Shubh Gautam, how will we specify that we get the best paint, or how will we specify to our manufacturers of this pre-painted steel that we want the best paint? Because today there is no measurement. Today we only say color coated, and what you said rightly, we just try to specify the amount of zinc, or whether it is 150 GSM, 245. If it is alu zinc, we use 150 GSM and all that stuff. But on the color, proactively, how do we say this is what we need? How do you specify?
A good question, Mr. Mohan. If you look at Japan, Japan does not do non-tariff barriers because they cannot do it. And still it is impossible to export to Japan. How do they do it? They do it using the IPR route, which means they say, in Japan, we will use this product. It has to be covered under so-and-so IPR. So, I mean, they get away beyond the non-tariff barriers by having whites. There are 3 specifications which every paint should have. And we've been saying it for many years, and nobody listens. The first is amount of filler. No paint should have any filler, because filler is a way of reducing cost. That's how the PVC pipe industry completely got ruined. And there's a very simple test of doing it. So why don't people say no fillers? That's number 1. Number 2, there's something called a water boil test. You do a cupping of 7.5 millimeters after cross hatch and dip it in boiling water for 60 minutes. The cupping machine costs you only 90,000 rupees. A beaker costs you 25 rupees. A heater costs you 150 rupees. That's all it takes. And there should be no peel. If the paint adheres well, it will perform well. Still, it is not done because 70% of paints in India fail the water boil test. And number 3, you have to know the molecular weight of the resin that the paint it is made of. People don't even bother because the only performance characteristic of a paint in India is the cost. As I told you, a 5012 is sold for 140 rupees, sold for 200 rupees. How many people would buy a paint for 200 rupees? Everybody wants 140, going down to 120, but we want to make the best color-coated steel. Clear answer, water boil test, no fillers, and of course, the polymer molecular weight. Very simple test, no rocket science needed.
Okay, thank you.
So we have one question from Mr. Saurabh Agarwal. He's asking, why is there such price difference between different manufacturers who say the material is AZ70 and the best quality? However, there is a price difference of 10,000 rupees. Anybody can answer.
That question for me, I think so, Ashwin. Would you like to take that?
Yeah, so I will take from you and then I will take from Ashwani.
Yeah, so see, as Mr. Gautam earlier mentioned that AZ70 is only a part of the total offering. A lot of cost goes into the base metal, then the coating, whether it's AZ70 or 150, and then the painting, paint processes or paint systems, what is the back coat, how much is the back coat, how much is top coat, and all those things. So these days, you have option of supplying paint with 35 microns, and you can also supply a monocoat with say 13, 14 microns. So you can see the huge difference in terms of paint cost itself, and then what is the kind of paints you are using, and what is the kind of brand you're talking about. So if you look at the entire thing, is possible. It's possible to make supply a painted sheet for 15,000 villas. Why 10,000? I can always supply you either 70, 15,000 villas. But you need to know what I want to use it for. What am I buying and paying for?
Dr. Shubh Gautam.
I don't have much to add except the fact that there is always a brand perception that someone pays for, and brand perception is not something you can create overnight. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's something called warranty. There's something called a brand. A warranty you offer saying, okay, this product is warranted for performance. But if you buy a Coca-Cola bottle, every bottle of Coca-Cola is warranted. You don't have to write it. That's part of the branding. Branding takes time, and branding obviously gives you results. So I would attribute to saying that most of it is because of branding, and obviously the amount of what goes into it. The only little place where I'd like to probably add my two little bit is, it has been documented that monocoats are better than two coats, because there is a way a primer has to be applied. A primer has to be undercured, because primer will pass again when the top coat is baked. And we've had problems in India where customers have said, oh, your primer does not pass MEK rubs. It is not supposed to pass MEK rubs. If it passes MEK rubs, when it goes into the top coat oven, it will fracture. So when we had, there was a monocoat, unicoat rollout, it was a humongous success. We generated more than 500 pages of knowledge from that. The biggest knowledge we got was the quality complaints reduced, because we took away the variable called primer. The moment you took away the variable called primer, suddenly you had a paint which was responsible for everything. Now, if you look at a line, a primer oven, 40 meters, top coat oven, 40 meters. No, primer has to be undercured, top coat has to be rightly cured. Now, how will you do that? In winters, the steel is at 9 degrees. In summer, the steel is at 40 degrees. Tell me somebody who changes the temperature of the ovens by 30 degrees in India. I'm giving you practical points. Now, if you can do this, this has to be done by way of coatings, if that answers the question.
So we have a question from Mr. ACR Das. He's asking a question from Dr. Shubh Gautam. His question is, fully agree with you that quality of color is of great importance, but don't you agree that there should be a minimum standard coating, weight or thickness for color, even with the best quality color? In this perspective, what is your comment on supply of lower than 70 coating CC sheet, which is prescribed in IS?
Very good afternoon, Dasa. You are far more knowledgeable than me to answer your question. Yes, I do not agree that there should be a mandate of zinc on color-coated steel. To put it this way, if there was a mandate that no laptop can be less than 1 kg, Apple would not exist. There should be no mandate on weight. There should be a mandate on performance. Quality standards should say a water boiling test is mandatory. The quality of paint should not have fillers. The molecular weight needs to be 3.6 million mass units per mole. You should specify performance. You should specify tests. Now, even if we specify grammages specification of zinc in color-coated is irrational, I would say. I would not say it right or wrong. It's irrational. Now, that doesn't mean it should be zero. I'm against PPCR. We still have a market of 14 to 15,000 tons in India. I'm amazed. So there's, and moving on to alloys. When we say that metal should be 70, you know, the zinc nickel is 8 corrosive than zinc aluminum, which means a 20 gram zinc nickel is equal to 160 grams of zinc aluminum, galvalume. So are you trying to say by putting standards, we should not innovate? We should not get somebody who like to do a zinc nickel? A zinc nickel tin is 12 times more anti-corrosive, which means a 10 gram of zinc nickel tin is equal to 120 gram of zinc. Are you trying to say in India, there should be no investment towards innovation because my standard says zinc should be 120 GSM? I completely disagree with that. Standards kill innovation if they are not made properly. And let's be very, very vocal about it. And I am on your side when I say that we need to have non-tariff barriers. And what is the way of non-tariff barrier is quality standards. I completely agree from that point of view. But at the same time, we also need to have certain barriers which say that what, I mean, let's call a hair a hair, if that answers the question.
Mr. PV Mohan, we have a question for you from Mr. Rajiv Shukla. He's asking, what is Kirby requirement of color-coated steel, and is it 100% PPGL, or does they buy PPGI as well?
Yeah, we don't buy PPGA. That's first, and we buy basically bare galvalume as well as PPGA. So we almost buy in India around 2,000 tons per month, both put together. That is PGL and PPGL put together.
We have one question from Mr. Ganesh Pai. He's asking, how do we ensure that Indian PPGI conform to BIS standard? So we can ask from Ashwini ji, and then we can ask from Dr. Shubh Gautam. How do we ensure Indian PPGI conform to BIS standards? Anybody can answer.
Well, there are for BIS standards already suggested. You can look at the TCs and also do some basic tests done, as Mr. Shubh Gautam told earlier. But at the face of it, by looking at the product, very difficult. You probably will want to go to a reputed supplier if you don't have the right testing facility with you. But if you can spend some basic amount of money on small basic tests, like salt spray values and all those things, you probably can know it yourself.
Dr. Shubh Gautam, you like to add anything?
I probably did what Ashwani said. Absolutely well.
Okay.
Formulated.
So moving on to next question, we have from Mr. Vivek Pusalkar. He's asking, how much more corrosion protection color can give over metal coating? Anyone can answer.
Sorry, I didn't get the name. Can I have the name, please, Mohan?
Mr. Vivek, he is asking, how much more corrosion protection color can give over metal coating?
So we have products, polyester products, which give you 40 years of lifetime. And we have completed almost 21 years in Florida of these products. And these are not PVDF. They don't cost you an arm and a leg. They're simple polyester.
So now we have one quality.
I'll tell you, Vivek, it's also something that we have to understand. It's not Ferrari which wins the race. It's a Michael Schumacher in a Ferrari which wins the race. If I had the Ferrari, I would not be able to win it. It's also the way you handle the products. It's also a part of application. I visited more than 110 lines, color coding lines in China, and trust you me, we call them color coding lines. They should not be called color coding lines. So it's proper application, coatings, oil and gas industry. So where does anti-corrosive standard come from? Anti-corrosive standard don't come from ASTM or BIS or GIS. Let me be very frank. Anti-corrosive standards come from nuclear industry. We call them gold standards. What applies to aerospace and nuclear? Because there are zero defect areas. You can't have a fusion reactor having corrosion and everything break loose. So till about, I would say 2007, aerospace only used cadmium coatings. But because cadmium was a heavy metal, so they had to switch to other coatings. But cadmium was super level in terms of anti-corrosive. Even today, let me tell you, hot dip zinc, vapor deposition of zinc, electro deposition of zinc, do you think they give the same corrosion protection? Of course not. We've seen the problems. 250 GSM, 350 GSM of zinc peeled off, fall apart. It's more important how you apply the product. And as I said, lightweighting will be the norm of the day.
So we have another question. This question is from Mr. Rajiv Shukla. He's asking, as we understand from talk, that galvalume has 55% aluminum, while PPGI has 100% zinc. Since zinc is expensive than aluminum, PPGI should be expensive than galvalume, but in reality, it is vice versa. Why so?
Well, technically, when we say 45% zinc and 55% aluminum, if we convert this by percentage by weight to percentage by volume, what we are saying is 20% zinc, 80% aluminum. So if you look at copybook practice, yes, for 80% volume aluminum product will be cheaper to make. Now, why it is more expensive? Maybe because it has been positioned well. It's a good business model. It's a great business expectancy. And probably, Ashwani, you'd like to add something since you are a leader in Galvalue?
Yeah, there is, see, rightly said, no, we also kind of, though the aluminum content is higher, but when you buy the alloy, basically alu and zinc combined alloy, it is not that proportionally cheaper as compared to pure zinc. That's one. Second thing is the process. When you process galvanum versus galvanize, the power cost is higher because of the temperature reasons. And third big reason is, the coverages or the area which galvanum offers you for the same weight vis-a-vis GI is different. So galvanum basically offers you around 2 to 3% more coverage as compared to GI. So that is why it's also having position to be at higher price.
So we have one.
Concept. Excellent. Because galvalume is lightweighting in nature, hence it can have that pedestal of duress. Wonderful.
I hope Mr. Rajiv Shukla has got his answer, and I believe this must be a common question which a lot of people are asking. 2-3 more questions we will take because we have received so many questions. I'm trying to accommodate as many as questions we can. Another question we have from Mr. Shankara Raman from NITT. He is asking, can you mention an application for which color-coated steel yet to be produced? Any application where color-coated steel is yet to be produced? Market exists, but produce not available.
Medical applications. Angioplasty stents for CABG. I've heard of in China. There's a need for color-coated medicated stents. So what happens is when you put a stent in an artery and you put a balloon to inflate to get the fat out of that artery, there's a lot of inflammation because the artery is very thin. And if you look at the plastic tube where the balloon is in angioplasty, inflammation means that there's a lot of blood. So what we do is there's 3 ways we can do medication. We can do intravenous, we can do intramuscular, we can do oral. Neither of them reaches the point of inflammation. So the demand is that we should have all the catheters which are medicated. And so there are coatings which are in process of being developed, color coatings, which probably will carry medication on the top. So the point of inflammation you can apply, automatically the medication is also being applied. And I hope that we should see these products in a couple of years.
I think one more application where I can tell you on the building applications where color coating has not really played a major role is whenever we are making buildings for any where the processes are something which emanate some acidic fumes, then the steel is not an alternative. Like we use galvalume material or galvanized material. As soon as steel fumes come up, immediately the steel corrodes. And I think we need to develop a proper paint application to ensure that we also meet that type of requirement wherever there are acidic fumes or any forging type of applications, etc.
Mr. Mohan, let me add to it. You're right. I was referring to pre-painted steel. If you have a post-painted operation, we can connect offline. I can give you 5 examples of paints which you can put in any acidic environment. But for a pre-painted operations, you have steel and metallurgy that comes into play because in a pre-painted steel, we have only 15 seconds to cure the damn paint. In 15 seconds, we want the rheology right, we want the cross-linking right, and we want weathering of 40 years to be right. It is the toughest paint to make, I can assure you. So when it comes down to pre-paint, there are challenges, but post-paint, Tons of products available. Happy to help.
Okay.
We have one quality related question from Mr. Soumya Chokar, Miss Soumya Chokar. She is asking, whenever a color coated sheet is installed anywhere, it is bent, welded, drilled into, which exposes the steel underneath to the environment. What is the best way to handle this and aesthetics of
Soumya, we have a product, and this happens everywhere globally. Steel is meant to be chopped. Onions are meant to be chopped. So let's not look at how they should be chopped. We have a product called Cut Edge Pro. It's called a CEP. It was launched 2 years back. It's nothing but a small spray, very affordable. And we have mandated to most of our secondary consumers that once you have installed and done away with whatever you are doing, please apply this Cut Edge Pro to all the cut edges. It doesn't cost a dime, more than a dime, because a 200 rupee aerosol will do more than 2 tons of steel on cut edge. You do that and you're up and running. You're done. I hope that answers your question. Please connect offline and we'll let you know. Happy to help on Cut Edge Pro details.
We have one question from Mr. B.N. Gupta. He's asking, what is the difference Galvalume and Galfan? So far, corrosion resistance is concerned.
Ashwini, you can answer. Ashwin can take that.
Ashwini ji, so what is the difference between Galvalume and Galfan? So far, corrosion resistance.
Yeah, in terms of Galvalume is more of a aluminum-based product. Percentage of aluminum is higher as compared to zinc. And other products like Galfon or Postmac or Bengalis are more zinc-based products. So zinc percentage is very high. So in terms of corrosion resistance, salt spray values, Galvalume always gives you higher life salt spray values. Say in a Galvalume razor 150, you can easily get 1000 hours salt spray value, which you may not get in Galfan or Postmac. There the coating had to be far higher. So a coating of 275 GSM plus in Galfan and others will be equal to Galvalume razor 150. So both can do the trick, but depends upon what is the coating you're asking for.
Right, sir. We have one more question from Mr. Suneet Goyal from Naresh Steel. He's asking, what is the advantage of Unicoat? Is it only commercial advantage or technical development as well? Advantage of Unicoat, anyone can answer.
Yeah, today or tomorrow, we will have to face the devil that we create. We cannot use this planet as a dumping ground. We cannot extract from this planet and forget about our deeds. We cannot dry up the rivers, cut all the forests, and completely mess the planet. And this is our personal environmental sustainability responsibility. Zinc is not an artificial product. Zinc is a natural product. Zinc will not last forever. We don't start working towards reducing zinc and increasing performance. I'm not saying reducing zinc and reducing performance. We will face tremendous pressure in times to come. Such is the case with primer. If primer is not applied properly, then it is better do not apply primer. And when we say not applied properly, there is a science to it. When a line is running at 140 meters per minute, and you have only seconds, 15 to 20 seconds for a primer to bake, and we are applying 3 microns. A human hair is 100 microns. What are we trying to do? So if you are in the business of applying 3 microns, better don't apply primer. A Unicoat is a better product. It has been proven globally. Oil and gas industry is on a Unicoat product. A primer is not necessary. Primer is only an intercoat between the steel substrate and the top coat. Technologies have moved on. We used to say, whenever there is a burn, what do you do? In terms of water, what did we say, right? Whenever we had ulcer, what we said, drink milk. What do we say now? Don't drink milk. This is advancement in technology. Similarly, primer was there when we didn't have cleaning mechanisms. Primer was there, we didn't have electro-cleaning mechanisms, when we didn't have good quality lines, when we didn't have good control characteristics, when we didn't have Profibus systems, when we didn't have high-speed things. Now, times have changed. And with removing primer, do you know how much carbon you save? As it is, we are carbon positive. For every drum that we buy, 50% we evaporate, and we don't feel bad about it. And what we evaporate comes out of the Mother Earth, because all the solvents are derivative of crude oil. Automotive industry in Europe has been told from 2022, for all carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide that you secrete, you have to pay a price. And that price runs into 475 million euros a year. And that kickstarted a project called Recapture CO2. And tremendous amount of innovation has happened. We were involved too. Volkswagen and Audi have invested 30 million euros in setting up recapture CO2 plants, which means the amount of CO2 we emanate, we will recapture back from the nature. We will face that very soon, within 10 years. We don't take into account how much solvent we are blowing. So the moment you take off primer, a lot of mental headache, a lot of moral conscience is on the right side, because color-coated steel with the solvent is not green steel, it is red steel.
So with regards to primer, we have one question from Mr. Leela Krishnan. He's from Chennai. He is saying, I am from puff sandwich panel manufacturing industry. Actually, we don't require a finished back coat. We require only a foam adhesive premier or only galvanized finish. In actual, we are not getting this type of coil in Chennai. It may reduce the cost for us.
Sure, that's a valid proposition. I mean, I'm going and saying, if white goods appliances are only meant to stay indoors and the anti-corrosivity is only grade 1, why do we need to have primer in white goods, in appliances? Forget any element. Why can't we take off and say that much more solvent? Why can't we become that much more greener in the process of eventually becoming green? He's right. How he wants to do it, he can probably connect offline. We'll find a solution for him. But he's right in terms of directionality of thinking.
So we have one question. Is there an application for sandwich panel products so that adhesive can be more relevant over? This question is from Mr. Sharaf Mohammed.
It's a possibility. It's a technical discussion. Yeah, it's a possibility, but it's a technical discussion which probably will be better done offline given the constraints of time.
Ashwini ji, would you like to answer this? Is there any application for sandwich panel products so that adhesive can be more?
Yeah, there is. You need to see this entire end use in totality. It can be worked upon.
Okay, we are taking last question and then I will request Dr. Shubh Gautam to conclude the session. This question is from Mr. CB Jacob. He is asking, what is the reason for some shade failure during lab test for 5% NaOH and 5% HCl test? He is from Tata Steel BSL. Anyone can answer. Ashwini ji, you like to answer this? What is the reason for some shades failure during lab test for 5% NaOH and 5% HCl test?
Well, I am not able to answer that. Is the technical.
Let me break it. Okay. So basically, what he's talking about is acid resistance and alkali resistance, right? Now, acid resistance and alkali resistance, as we showed in one of the videos, is inherent property of the chemistry that we're talking about. It is dominated by a lot of factors apart from cross-linking density, right? Now, please don't mind my saying it. You can't put all your fruits in one basket. If you need certain products, you got to pay a price for it. If the tendency is that no, we don't want to pay a price for it, then of course our aspirations are not justified. But yes, if you pay a price for it, then you'll get on the line what you get on the lab. Problem in India is very few paint and coating manufacturers have done real R&D. No. Most are offshoots of multinationals. So they've got formulations at one point of time, which is like 10 years back. Those formulations are not valid because they've been indigenized. Once they're indigenized, they no longer carry the same warranty of performance, which they were when they were formulated probably 20 years back. Number two, none of the coating suppliers understand what polymers and resins are because they outsource it. That's the reason we were shocked when we did a study and found that majority of the paints and coatings have fillers. And that's the way we cut cost. It's unthinkable. First, we have to see what we want and are we willing to pay a price. The problem will come when we say, I want something, I want a Mercedes, but I don't have money and I can't buy it because my budget is Maruti 800. That's where the problem will arise. And that's my biggest fear. We are talking about quality and not changing our less on colors. Thank you.
Dr. Shubh Gautam, now I request you to please conclude the session.
Thank you, Metalogic, and thank you, my dear friends who have been with us for almost 2 hours. This is indeed a sensitive subject because if I look at steel industry, color-coated steel is the newest baby on the block. American Iron and Steel Association was formulated in 1885. Yes, 1885, and their job is to do innovations in steel. And they once got exasperated and said, steel is the biggest laggard in innovation because the only innovation that happens is in process, not in steel. How do we make more per ton? How do we make more per cubic centimeters? That's the American Iron Institute. Color coating needs to be understood from that paradigm. And I'm so happy that we had such a great esteemed panelist who gave some wonderful points. I couldn't agree any less with Mr. Sridhar Revinipati when he said that the market is exploding. It's going to go from 2.3 million metric tons to 4 million metric tons, and that users need more aspirational paints like antibacterial, antiviral, antimicrobial for clean rooms, and cold chains will be a future investment, which is a wise investment. The government said 25 to 30 cold rooms in each street is a mandatory. So there were reasons why there will be a spurt in color coating. At the same time, what we also need to understand is color coating is cannibalizing flat products of galvanized and galvalume. And this is not a trend that we see in India. This is a trend globally. Color coating, if color coating grows from 2.5 to 10 million tons, then what degrows? And we have to understand that and probably work into that. 111 million toilets were made out of color-coated steel, which is a great reason for joy and pride as far as color coating is concerned. And he also touched about biomimicry, that today, doors and windows are a very big portfolio for ArcelorMittal, and then they are wood finishes, which means pre-painted steel is now cannibalizing other materials, preferred materials of usage like wood and shingles. This we saw in North America 25 years back. This we now see again. And Mr. Sridhar probably from that. Mr. Sanjay Sahani was very nice when he said that yes, total coated market was 6 million tons, and that with Color Nova, the brand rollout, they see a lot of growth coming by. Durashine has grown by 100% year on year, and he also felt that the origin mandates and the checks that have been put in place by the government of India and the customs department in India to hold the threshold of this import invasion will go a long way in giving the domestic industry the fill-up in terms of being motivated to produce a better quality product more and more, which is definitely the demand today. If you look at the three devils that we face, the first devil is import invasion. Anything and everything comes into India, sells because people are not educated, and that's the reason we are where we are. If China can be at 50 million tons of steel, as Ashwani had said, we should have been at least 15 million tons of color-coated steel. We are only 2.5 million tons. It's absolutely shocking. Mr. Mohan had some wonderful points. Of course, he started by saying PCM is used in factories, buildings, and multi-fair establishments. They've been at the front end of this great revolution in India, and they have been now graduating to more performance coatings like heat reflective coatings, thermal insulation coatings, and coatings with high solar reflective index. That's so nice to know. What he also said made a lot of sense, and this is something that I touched upon in lightweighting. He said presence and incremental increase of pre-painted color-coated steel has resulted in a reduction of capital expenditure for a whole lot of industry. Now understand, when you do lightweighting, when capital expenditure comes down, you save on petrol, you save on wear and tear of a road, you save on the life of a transport mechanism. So that is something which probably Kirby has been at the front end of taking care of. Demand has been double digits in color-coated steel, which is great, 15 to 60% in India. But at the same time, we also need to see the flip side of the user pain. There are a lot of challenges, and if challenges are not met, I can assure you we'll never be not half as close to China, not as quarter as close to China. We won't be able to see probably 1 million tons of color-coated steel, and those are very valid challenges. For example, volatility in pricing. How can a user enter into a contract with his customer in a futuristic contract for 12 months based on the price prevailing today? It could work both ways. You could make a lot of money if the prices are low, and you could lose a lot of money. Now, if that was the case, then probably hedging foreign currency would have been a better business model for anybody rather than making pre-engineered buildings. So volatility in pricing needs to be controlled. There needs to be a mechanism. Unavailability of high-strength material, yes, that is something which we need to look into and see how we cater to more and more demanding applications. Commodities will be commodities forever. And then MOQs, minimum ordering quantities on special colors, and delayed deliveries do cause a kind of hardware as far as users are concerned. So these challenges are valid, and all stakeholders need to come and put their shoulders to wheels and see how we overcome this, so that tomorrow, it's not about Kirby doing more work in India. It's about how Kirby going and exporting this. It's not about China exporting to us. Why don't we say that in 20 years we'll export to China? We'll export to China because we'll make a type of steel which they don't have. I'm giving you an example, quiet steel. We have special coatings which can be put on steel and they become quiet steel. So if you make a cup of quiet steel and you drop it, it doesn't make noise. So we should have that mandate going forward. We should have a plan of 20, 30 years and say, we'll invest here today, 1 hour per week, and see that we have to be there in 20 years of time. We have to be there by 2040. We'll be exporting to China. And that can overcome when these challenges are met, which are very fairly new. And coming down to Ashwani, some really good points. And he said he dwelled upon the global pre-coated metal size, and which clearly shows the headroom that India has to grow from 2.5 million tons to anywhere. But at the same time, we need to be quality conscious. Coming down to white goods, he said income parity and demand cycle, given the fact that our genetic order remains that we are nuclear families in nature, white goods will tend to grow by at least 2.5% in the next 5 or 6 years. There's also a reason why our user perspectives and consumption patterns are changing, is because we have a lot of international exposure. And that has also triggered a fact that COVID has been a silver lining. The confirmation bias because of COVID is people have bought more dishwashers, they bought more washing machines. It's a great news to have from somebody. There's some quarter which is doing very well. And of course, at the same time, how can 100% dose of refrigerators be imported? And there's a catch there, of course. Refrigerator doors are typically made in electro-galvanized steel, because electro-galvanized steel gives you that finish. We have electro-galvanized operation in this country now. We have only one line, but we have made a start. So there has to be a stakeholder. There has to be a replacing electro-galvanizing, trying to come up with a front door will not work. It's aspiration, which will use much more resources and give you that much less performance. So we need to come forward. I would ideally say we have to have a domestic committee on color coding, where we need to meet once in a quarter, and we need to understand what it needs to be done. This discussion is not about ArcelorMittal or JSW or American Precoat or Kirby. This is about how Indian pre-painted steel industry will be 10 years, 20 years from now, and what needs to be done now to make that happen in 20 years. I thank, last but least, the friends who had joined us and been with us for 2 years in such a boring topic. Thank you, Monica, and your back-end staff and Metalogic team for making this possible. And God bless India, God bless color-coated steel. I hope we'll continue to grow, and we should make a dent and sell it to China and Japan in times to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shubh Gautam, for elaborated concluding remark about each speaker and the points which you have highlighted. And yes, you have rightly said that we must have a committee. It is not about companies, it is about the product which we are developing. And like you stated in the beginning, it is the king who saves the kingdom. Like that, the color will save the steel. With this, I would like to thank our expert panelist, Dr. Shubh Gautam, Chief Technical Architect, American Precoat, California, Mr. Sridhar Revinipati, ED and CEO, Coated Steel, AMNS, India, Mr. Sanjay Sahani, Chief of Sales and Marketing, Branded Products and Retail, Tata Steel Limited, Mr. Ppgi, Mohan, Director, Kirby Building Systems Limited, Mr. Ashwini K Sharma, VP Sales and Marketing, JSW Steel Coated Products, for taking out time for us. And also thank you to our lovely audience who never fail to make any session interesting by putting up great questions. Once again, thank you to all our sponsors. Webinars sponsored by American Precoat, California, Tata Steel, Color Nova, JSW Steel, Color on Plus, and NMDC Limited. It is our sponsors who are keeping us alive, which I always say that. And viewers, a recorded version of this webinar is available